I knew the axe was falling the moment I walked into the conference room and smelled the distinct, cloying scent of desperation by Chanel coming off the new CEO. Claire, the founder's daughter and a woman whose business acumen was entirely inherited alongside her daddy's hairline, was sitting at the head of the table like she was waiting to order a mimosa at brunch. The air conditioner in the boardroom was humming a low, mournful tune, probably grieving the death of common sense in this building. I took my seat, placed my phone face down, and waited for the circus to start. It didn't take long. Claire didn't believe in warm-ups, she believed in disruption, which is corporate speak for I'm going to break things I don't understand and blame the IT department. She cleared her throat, a sound like a jagged pebble rattling in a tin can. Michelle, she said, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth, like a shark that had just paid for veneers. We've been reviewing the Q3 operational redundancy metrics. It seems your position as chief infrastructure architect is, how do I put this, legacy baggage. I didn't blink. I've been in this game for 20 years. I've survived dot-com busts, housing crashes, and a marriage to a man who thought investment portfolio meant buying scratch-offs at the gas station. You learn to spot a hustler a mile away. Speaking of spotting things early, if you're digging this confession so far, go ahead and smash subscribe button and drop a like. It keeps the servers running, unlike what's about to happen in this story. Anyway, back to the execution. Legacy baggage, I repeated, my voice flat. It's a Texas drawl, slow and heavy, the kind that sounds polite until you realize it's wrapping around your throat. Is that what we're calling the financial backbone of this entire company now? Because last I checked, my baggage processes about $40 million a day in client transactions. Claire laughed. It was a practiced sound, airy and dismissive, the kind of laugh you learn at a Swiss finishing school. Oh, Michelle, we're moving to the cloud. We're pivoting to a decentralized, AI-driven model. Your on-premise mindset is just cute, but it's obsolete. Effective immediately, your role is eliminated. She slid a manila envelope across the mahogany table. It stopped exactly 3 inches from my hand. The other board members, men I had made rich, men I had saved from federal audits, men who had eaten brisket at my backyard barbecues, stared at their shoes. Cowards, all of them. They knew what was coming and they let the net baby pull the trigger because they were terrified of her father, Harold. I didn't reach for the envelope. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just looked at Claire, really looked at her. She was wearing a blazer that cost more than my first car, but she wore it like a costume. She didn't know how the sausage was made, she just liked eating the hot dog. You're firing me, I stated, not asking. I'm liberating you, she smirked, tapping her manicured nails on the table. Hand over your badge and laptop, Michelle. Security will escort you out. We need to focus on fresh energy. Youth, innovation. I stood up slowly. My knees popped. Reminder of 45 years on this earth, 20 of them spent hunched over server racks and coding until my eyes bled. I reached into my purse, pulled out my badge, and dropped it on the table. It made a plastic clack that echoed in the silence. Claire, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You have exactly 10 minutes. She blinked, her smile faltering for a microsecond. Excuse me? 10 minutes, I repeated. That's the heartbeat interval. You have 10 minutes before the servers I own, the ones you think are legacy baggage, stop receiving the handshake signal from my encrypted key. Once that signal stops, the transaction gateways lock down. Everything freezes. Payroll, vendor payouts, client processing, all of it. The room went deadly silent. Even the AC seemed to hold its breath. Don't be dramatic, Claire scoffed, rolling her eyes. IT has full control. We have passwords. You have passwords to the dashboard, I corrected gently. You don't have the lease to the engine. You see, Claire, you didn't read the founding documents. You didn't read the vendor contracts. You were too busy rebranding the logo to realize that North Star Systems doesn't own the transaction servers. I do. I turned to the rest of the board. I'd suggest you gentlemen check your email. I sent over the lease termination notice 5 minutes ago. Since my employment is the condition for the active lease and my employment just ended, I checked my watch. You have 7 minutes left. Get out. Claire shrieked, her face flushing a blotchy, ugly red. Get her out of here, security. 2 beefy guards stepped forward. I didn't make them touch me. I smoothed my skirt, picked up my purse, and walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the brass handle. You might want to call your dad, Claire, I said over my shoulder. Tell him he owes me for the brisket. I walked out of that boardroom and into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The carpet smelled like industrial cleaner and lies. I didn't look back. I walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby, and waited. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a cold, calm clarity settling in my chest like a block of dry ice. They thought I was just an employee. They thought I was a line item on a spreadsheet that could be deleted to boost the quarterly bonus pool. They didn't understand that I wasn't just working at North Star Systems. I was North Star Systems, and they had just unplugged life support. I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors slide shut, cutting off the view of the receptionist who was frantically answering a ringing phone. The descent began, 10 floors down to the lobby. By the time I hit the ground floor, first timer would expire. By the time I got to my car, the first client would get an error message. I walked out into the humid Texas heat. The sun was blinding, reflecting off the asphalt of the parking lot. I put on my sunglasses, tortoise shell, polarized, expensive, and unlocked my truck. Yes, I drive a truck. In Texas, driving a Prius is considered a cry for help. I climbed into the cab of my F-150, tossed the severance envelope onto the passenger seat without opening it, and started the engine. I didn't go home. I wasn't going to hide and cry into a pint of Ben and Jerry's. I drove to a little dive bar 3 miles down the road, a place called the Rusty Anchor where the beer was cold, the floor was sticky, and nobody asked you about your KPIs. I ordered a bourbon, neat, and set my phone on the bar. I opened the timer app. 00:00:45 seconds. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned, a good, clean burn that washed away the taste of Claire's perfume. I watched the seconds tick down. 3, 2, 1, 0. My phone didn't ring immediately. That's the beauty of a complex system failure. It's not an explosion. It's a suffocation. It starts quiet. A failed packet here, a timeout there. It ripples outward like a contagion. I signaled the bartender for another round. Keep 'em coming, Joe, I said. I'm celebrating. Oh yeah, Joe grunted, wiping a glass with a rag that had seen better decades. What's the occasion? Birthday? Better, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I just became the most expensive consultant in the state of Texas. The phone screen lit up. A notification from the internal Slack channel, which I hadn't been removed from yet because Claire's disruption team was too incompetent to revoke my credentials properly. System alert, critical gateway timeout. Error code, dead man switch, I chuckled. I had coded that error message myself 5 years ago, late one night after Harold had promised me that I would always be taken care of. I named it Dead Man because that's what a company becomes when it cuts out its own heart. The chaos was just beginning, and I had a front row seat, a full glass of whiskey, and absolutely zero intention of picking up the phone when it started to ring. To understand why Claire was currently staring at a red screen screaming about a dead man switch, you have to understand where North Star Systems actually came from. It didn't start in that glass and steel monolith downtown. It didn't start with venture capital funding or synergy meetings. It started in a garage in 2004, smelling of stale pizza and desperation. Harold Wells wasn't a bad man back then. He was just a guy with a vision for a logistics payment platform and a credit score lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. I was the one with the credit. I was the one with the technical chops. I met Harold at a networking event where he was trying to pitch his idea to a wall because nobody else would listen. I listened. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, I bought in. But I wasn't an idiot. Even back then, I knew that partnership is just a fancy word for future lawsuit. So when we built the infrastructure, I made a deal. Harold could have the brand, the client list, and the front-end software, the pretty buttons that the customers clicked. But the heavy lifting, the transaction servers, the encryption bridges, the actual metal boxes that processed the money, I bought those. Me, personally. I formed a separate LLC, Ironclad Holdings, and I leased the infrastructure back to North Star. It was a tax move at first, a way to protect assets. Harold loved it because it kept the debt off North Star's books while we were trying to get loans. He signed the Master Service Agreement, MSA, without even reading the fine print. The fine print said this: the lease for the critical infrastructure is valid only so long as Michelle Vance is employed as the Chief Infrastructure Architect of North Star Systems. Upon termination of her employment for any reason other than gross criminal negligence, the lease terminates immediately. For 20 years, that contract sat in a fireproof safe, gathering dust. North Star grew, we moved out of the garage, we hired staff, Harold got rich. I got comfortable, and then Harold got old and he decided to retire to a golf course in Florida, handing the keys to the kingdom over to Claire. Claire, who thought the cloud was actual magic and not just someone else's computer. Claire, who had spent the last 5 years finding herself in Bali on the company dime while I was pulling all-nighters patching security vulnerabilities. She hated me from day one. I represented everything she wasn't: competent, self-made, and essential. To her, I was just the grump in the corner office who said no to her expensive, stupid ideas. I sat in the bar, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, remembering the look on Harold's face when we landed our first $1 million client. He had hugged me, tears in his eyes, and said, "Michelle, you're the bedrock of this place. We don't exist without you." Well, Harold, you were right. I pulled up the remote admin terminal on my phone, not for North Star, but for Ironclad Holdings. The interface was simple, black background, green text. No fancy graphics, just raw data. The logs were scrolling by faster now. 14:15:00 handshake failed. 14:15:01 handshake failed. 14:15:02 connection refused, authentication token revoked. It wasn't that I had shut off the servers. I wasn't malicious. I simply stopped authenticated traffic. The servers were running fine. They were humming away in a climate-controlled data center 3 towns over, which I paid for. They just weren't talking to North Star anymore because North Star was no longer a paying tenant. It was like changing the locks on a rental house when the squatter finally leaves. I checked the North Star internal Slack again. It was a bloodbath. DevOps Steve, guys, why is the API returning a 403 forbidden on everything? Project MGR Sarah, clients are calling. The payment portal is down. Is this scheduled maintenance? DevOps Steve, I can't get into the server root. My keys aren't working. It's like the server doesn't exist. Sales Brad, I just lost a transaction mid-closing. What is happening? Then the message I was waiting for. CEO Claire, at everyone stop panicking. IT is fixing it. It's just a glitch from the transition. Michelle sabotaged a few codes on her way out. We will have it back up in 5 minutes. Sabotage, that was cute. She was already spinning the narrative. She was going to try and paint me as the disgruntled employee who cut the wires. She didn't realize that by accusing me of sabotage, she was admitting she had no control over her own product. I took a screenshot of her message. That would be useful later. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a Slack message this time. It was a call. Caller ID Harold Wells Mobile. I stared at the screen. Harold. He must have been on the 9th hole when his phone started blowing up. I debated answering. I really did. There was a part of me, the part that remembered the pizza in the garage, that wanted to pick up and explain it to him gently. But then I remembered the boardroom. I remembered the silence of the men I had worked with for 2 decades. I remembered Claire's laugh. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't the bedrock anymore. I was the landslide. The bartender, Joe, wandered back over. You all right, darlin'? You look like you're watching a car wreck. I am, Joe, I said, sliding a 20 across the bar. But I'm not in the car. I'm the one who designed the intersection. I opened my email app. I had drafted a message to my lawyer, David, earlier that morning. David was a shark in a suit, a man who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. The subject line was, Activation of Clause 14. B. Ironclad Holdings vs. North Star Systems. I hit send. Legal war hadn't even started yet, but the tactical nuke had already been dropped. I ordered some jalapeno poppers. I figured I needed some sustenance. Watching an empire burn is hungry work. By 3:00 p.m., the 5-minute glitch had turned into a 45-minute catastrophe. The rusty anchor was starting to fill up with the early happy hour crowd, mostly blue-collar guys dusting off drywall or oil grease. But my attention was glued to the digital window I had into my old life. I still had access to the chaotic symphony of the hash engineering channel. Why? Because I was the one who set up the SSO, single sign-on permissions, and I had buried my own admin rights so deep in the kernel of the authentication server that God himself would need a search warrant to find them. Claire's team of cloud natives wouldn't find that backdoor for weeks. DevOps Steve. Okay. I've tried rebooting the gateway. Nothing. I've tried rerouting the DNS. Nothing. The IP addresses for the transaction nodes are just gone. It's like they fell off the face of the earth. Junior Dev Kyle, Steve, I just ran a trace route. It's stopping at the ISB level. The destination host isn't accepting traffic from our domain. CTO Interim Gary, the guy they hired last week, visionary from Silicon Valley who wears scarves in July, just posted, have we tried flushing the cache? I laughed out loud, startling a guy next to me eating wings. Flushing the cache. It was like trying to fix a decapitation with a Band-Aid. The problem wasn't code. The problem was hardware ownership. The servers that processed the payments, specifically the high-volume, secure clusters required by banking regulations, resided in a rack at a co-location facility in Dallas. That rack was leased to Ironclad Holdings. North Star Systems connected to it via a dedicated encrypted VPN tunnel. When I walked out, I didn't break the code. I just revoked the VPN certificate. The tunnel collapsed. North Star was currently shouting its transaction data into a void. Then came the first real casualty. Sales VP Karen, no relation to the meme, but acts like it Claire. The Bank of Annieville just called. Their customers are getting transaction declined on every swipe at the grocery store. They are threatening to pull the contract. That's a $4M account, do something. I took a bite of a jalapeno popper, spicy, just like the situation in the server room. I imagined the scene on the 40th floor. The panic, the frantic typing, the smell of nervous sweat battling against the HVAC system. Claire would be screaming by now. She wasn't used to things not working. In her world, if the Wi-Fi was slow, you yelled at the barista. But you can't yell at a server rack. It doesn't care about your dad's money. I decided to twist the knife a little. Not directly, I couldn't interact or I'd show my hand too early, but I could check the logs of the backup system I had insisted they build 3 years ago. Ah, yes, the backup system. One Claire had defunded last budget cycle because redundancy is just paying twice for the same service. I navigated to the backup logs. Last backup, 8 months ago. Status, corrupted. Reason, storage limit exceeded. Subscription canceled by user, C. Wells. She had canceled the cloud storage subscription for the backups to save $500 a month, on a company generating $50 million a year. The sheer, staggering incompetence was almost poetic. It was grimecore poetry, written in binary. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Harold, it was Gary, the scarf-wearing interim CTO. I watched it ring. Ring, ring, I picked up, not to help but to gather intelligence. This is Michelle, I said, keeping my voice cool and professional like I was taking a reservation for dinner. Michelle, thank God, Gary sounded breathless. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. The transition seems to have snagged on some legacy protocols. We need the admin keys for the server cluster, just the root passwords. We can handle it from there. Gary, I said, I don't work for Northstar anymore. Giving you passwords would be a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I can't access systems I'm not authorized for. Don't give me that legal crap, he snapped. The visionary facade was cracking. Claire is breathing down my neck. The system is down. Just text me the damn password and we'll call it even. Call it even? I asked. Gary, do you know where those servers are physically located? The cloud? He guessed. No, Gary, they are in a building in Dallas. A building I pay rent on, a rack I own. You're asking for the keys to my house. Wait, he paused. You own the hardware? I own the metal, the silicon, and the electricity running through it. Since my lease agreement with Northstar was terminated at 2:15 p.m. today, you are currently trespassing on my bandwidth. Jesus, he whispered. Does Claire know? She's about to find out, I said. Good luck, Gary. I hope your resume is up to date. I hung up. The first ripple had turned into a wave. The tech team now knew this wasn't a bug. It was a structural void. They were trying to drive a car that had no engine, and they had just realized the hood was welded shut. I ordered another bourbon. The sun was starting to dip lower in the Texas sky, casting long, orange shadows across the bar. It was the golden hour. Appropriate. I was about to watch their golden goose get cooked. You know the saying, bad news travels fast? In the age of Twitter, X, bad news travels at the speed of fiber optics. By 4:30 p.m., #Northstar Down was trending locally in Austin and Dallas. I scrolled through the feed on my phone. It was beautiful. At Angry Mom TX, my card just got declined at the pharmacy for my kids' asthma meds. The pharmacist said the processor is down. Thanks at Northstar Sis for almost killing my kid. #fail at CryptoBro99, Northstar Systems is rug pulling. Can't access my merchant dashboard. Is this another FTX? At DeVito Fan for Life, ironically. This guy had a profile pic of Danny DeVito, just tried to pay my employees via Northstar. System dead. Guess we're paying an exposure this week. It wasn't just complaints, it was the digital dismantling of a brand's reputation in real time. And the best part? Claire's social media team, 2 unpaid interns and a brand evangelist named Tyler, were silent. They couldn't post because they couldn't log into their dashboard either. The social media scheduling tool was linked to the central authentication server. The one I owned. Oops. Back in the internal Slack, the panic had shifted from technical confusion to existential dread. HR Director Linda, everyone? I just tried to run the bi-weekly payroll batch. It failed. Error 503. Does anyone know if we can cut paper checks? Accounting Bob, paper checks? Linda, we have 400 employees spread across 3 states. Don't even have a check printer anymore. Claire threw it out last month to make room for the kombucha tap. The kombucha tap. I shook my head. That tap cost $5,000. The backup server subscription was $500. Priorities. Then came the extra pickles moment, the detail that exposed the rot. A notification popped up in the #general channel, which was usually reserved for birthday announcements and lost and found. Because the payment processor was failing, the automated error logs were spitting out raw transaction data into the chat as a default failsafe. I had set that up years ago to debug specific errors, but I never turned it off. System error, failed transaction. Vendor, Elite Private Jet Charters. Amount, $45,000. Memo, CEO Retreat Cabo. Status, declined insufficient infrastructure. The chat froze. The employees, who had been told last week that there was no money for cost of living raises, were now staring at a declined $45K charge for a CEO retreat to Cabo. Senior Dev Mike, Cabo? I thought she was at a strategic partner summit in Houston. Marketing Jen, we laid off 3 designers yesterday to streamline costs. Dev Ops Steve, I'm done. I'm literally watching my rent money vanish while she tries to fly to Cabo. Does anyone have Michelle's number? She's the only one who actually did anything around here. I sipped my drink. The mutiny wasn't being led by a charismatic revolutionary. It was being led by a failed jet charter payment. It was grime-core reality. The dirty laundry wasn't just aired, it was being live-streamed to the people whose livelihoods were being laundered. Suddenly, my access to Slack cut out. Connection lost. They had finally found the kill switch for my account. It took them 3 hours. Frankly, I was disappointed. I expected better from Gary, but the damage was done. The screenshots were already circulating. I saw a screenshot of the Cabo transaction pop up on Twitter 5 minutes later, posted by an anonymous account named Northstar Exile. Claire wasn't just fighting a tech failure anymore. She was fighting a class war within her own building. I signaled for the check. The first phase was complete. The technical infrastructure was dead. Social capital was incinerated. Now it was time for the money men to get involved. I walked out of the bar into the cooling evening air. The Texas sunset was a bruise of purple and red across the horizon. I had a meeting to prepare for. Not a scheduled one, but one I knew was coming. My phone buzzed, a text message. From David, lawyer, they just called. Their general counsel is threatening a temporary restraining order and an injunction. I told them to read clause 14. B again, they hung up. I think they're crying. I typed back, let them cry, it hydrates the skin. I got into my truck. The engine roared to life, a deep, reliable sound. Unlike North Star, my truck worked because I took care of it. I maintained it. I respected it. Claire treated her company like a rental car she bought insurance for. She was about to find out that acts of God don't cover acts of Michelle. Harold Wells was a man who believed in handshake deals and the sanctity of a golf handicap. He was currently in Naples, Florida, wearing linen pants that cost more than my mortgage payment, likely nursing a scotch and staring at the Gulf of Mexico. I could picture him perfectly. He'd be holding his phone like it was a grenade that had just had the pin pulled. And it had. The first voicemail appeared on my phone at 5:15 p.m. I didn't listen to it yet. I drove home, a nice ranch-style place on 3 acres outside the city limits. I had bought it with the bonuses Harold gave me back when he still ran the show. It was quiet here. No sirens, no corporate buzzwords, just crickets and the distant hum of the highway. I poured myself a glass of iced tea. I was done with the bourbon for now. I needed a clear head for the end game and sat on my back porch. I finally pressed play on the voicemail. Michelle, it's Harold. Look, I'm hearing some disturbing things from the board. Claire says you sabotaged the system, says you planted a virus. I told her that didn't sound like you, but the bank just called me, Michelle. The bank. They say our merchant processors are offline. Call me back. We need to fix this. His voice was shaky. It lacked the booming confidence of the man who used to sell vaporware to venture capitalists. He sounded old. I didn't call back. 10 minutes later, another voicemail. Michelle, pick up the damn phone. Gary says you own the servers? What the hell is he talking about? We own the company. How can you own the servers? I don't remember signing that. This is blackmail, isn't it? Whatever you want, we can discuss it. Just turn it back on. Claire is in over her head. I know that. Just help me out here for old time's sake. For old time's sake. The phrase hung in the humid air. I remembered old times. I remembered when the payroll system crashed in 2009, and I paid the engineers out of my own savings account so they wouldn't walk, and Harold promised to pay me back with interest. He did, eventually, but he forgot the interest. I remembered when his first wife left him, and I ran the company for 3 months while he went on a bender in Vegas. I remembered teaching Claire how to use Excel when she was an intern, and her rolling her eyes at me every time I corrected her formulas. Old times were expensive, and the bill was past due. I pulled out the file I kept in my home office. The original partnership agreement, the addendums, the LLC formation documents for Ironclad Holdings. There it was, in black and white, Harold's signature scrawled in blue ink at the bottom of the master service agreement. He hadn't read it. He had been too busy popping champagne to celebrate the funding round. He trusted me to handle the boring technical stuff. He trusted me to be his safety net. But he forgot that a safety net only works if you don't cut the ropes. My phone rang again. Harold, this time I answered. Hello, Harold. Michelle? He sounded relieved, but also angry. What the hell is going on? Why is my company offline? Your company isn't offline, Harold, I said calmly. Your software is working perfectly. It's just that your company has been evicted. Evicted? What are you talking about? The servers, the hardware, the infrastructure. It belongs to Ironclad Holdings. You know this. You signed the lease. I signed a lot of things, he shouted. I didn't sign away my company. No, you signed a lease that was contingent on my employment, I explained, as if speaking to a child. Claire fired me today. At 2:00 p.m., she called me legacy baggage. She said I was obsolete, so I took my baggage and left. My baggage just happened to be the servers. She fired you? Harold's voice dropped. She didn't tell me that. She said you quit in a huff. She lied, Harold. Just like she lied about the Cabo trip being a partner summit. Silence on the line, heavy breathing silence. Michelle, he said, his voice trembling. Fix it, please. I'll fire her. I'll fire Gary. I'll give you a raise, double your salary. Just turn the key back on. I can't do that, Harold. Why not? Is it the money? I'll wire you $1 million right now. Personal funds. It's not about the money, I said, watching a hawk circle the field behind my house. It's about the liability. You see, if I turn the servers back on now without a valid contract, I'm accepting liability for a system I don't manage. I'm not an employee anymore. I'm an outside vendor. And frankly, North Star Systems is a high-risk client. You have unstable leadership, a compromised cash flow, and a reputation that is currently burning down on Twitter. Ironclad Holdings doesn't do business with unstable partners. You're killing us, he whispered. No, Harold, I said softly. I'm just the coroner. Claire killed it. I'm just signing the death certificate. I hung up. I knew that was cruel. But cruelty is just efficiency without the emotional buffer. Harold had let his daughter treat the company like a toy. He had let her treat me like furniture. He needed to learn that you can't inherit respect and you can't buy loyalty once you've sold it down the river. I went back inside. I had a feeling the lawyers would be trying again soon, and unlike Harold, they wouldn't be appealing to emotion. They'd be coming with threats. Good thing I speak fluent threat. At 7:00 p.m., the cease and desist letter arrived via email. It was marked urgent in all caps, which is lawyer speak for we are panicking but trying to look scary. I forwarded it to David, my attorney. David is the kind of lawyer who wears cowboy boots to court and quotes the Bible while eviscerating the opposition. He called me 3 minutes later. Michelle, he chuckled. This is cute. They're citing the duty of loyalty and tortious interference. They're trying to argue that by enforcing your own contract, you're sabotaging their business. What's our play, David? I asked, putting my feet up on the coffee table. Well, he said, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. I'm going to send them a response attaching the 2018 asset allocation audit, the one where they explicitly declined to purchase the servers from you because they wanted to keep the depreciation off their books. Remember that? I remember, I smiled. Harold wanted his EBITDA to look better for the bank loan. Exactly. Can't claim ownership of something they legally refused to buy to save on taxes. It's called estoppel, and it's going to hit them like a freight train. The conference call happened 30 minutes later. It was me, David, North Star's general counsel, a guy named Robert who sounded like he was sweating through his phone, and Claire. This is extortion. Claire shrieked as soon as the line connected. She's holding our data hostage. Miss Wells, David's voice was like molasses. Please control yourself or we will terminate this call. My client is not holding anything hostage. Your data is sitting safely on drives that belong to my client. You are welcome to come and retrieve your data. We can provide you with the raw hard drives. Of course, you'll need your own servers to read them since you don't own any. We need the service restored immediately. Robert, the GC, interjected. We are losing thousands of dollars a minute. We'll sue you for damages. On what grounds? David asked. Clause 14b is clear. Lease terminates upon employment termination. You fired her. You terminated the lease. You evicted yourselves. We didn't know about the lease. Claire yelled. Ignorance of your own corporate structure is not a legal defense, darling, David drawled. In fact, it's a breach of fiduciary duty to your shareholders. You might want to worry less about suing Michelle and more about the class action lawsuit your investors are going to file when they find out you fired the woman who owned the power cord. Silence. Beautiful, heavy silence. What do you want? Robert asked, his voice defeated. We can draft a consulting agreement. Temporary reinstatement. Name your price. I leaned into the speakerphone. I don't want a job, Robert. I don't want money. I want you to understand something. You called me obsolete. You said I was baggage. Well, I'm unpacking my baggage elsewhere. We can get an injunction, Claire threatened, her voice cracking. I know judges. In Texas, David laughed. Miss Wells, you're in a contract dispute over hardware ownership with a clear paper trail. No judge in this state is going to force a private business owner to provide services to a client who isn't paying and who just fired them. You're dead in the water. We're willing to buy the servers. Robert said quickly, right now, we'll wire the funds. Fair market value plus 20%. Not for sale, I said. Everything is for sale, Robert pressed. No, I corrected. Commodities are for sale, leverage is not, and right now I have all the leverage. Those servers are custom configured. They run proprietary encryption scripts that I wrote. Even if I sold you the boxes, you wouldn't know how to turn them on without me. And I am not for hire. Ruining my company? Claire sobbed. The anger was gone, replaced by pure spoiled child despair. My dad is going to kill me. He might, I agreed, but at least you'll have plenty of time to work on your resume. I hear legacy baggage handler is a growing field. I hung up the phone. David texted me a moment later. That was the most fun I've had with my pants on in years. I laughed, but the laugh caught in my throat. It was a victory, yes, but it was also a funeral. I had spent 20 years building that company. I had loved it. I had bled for it. And now I had to be the one to put a bullet in its head because the new owners were letting it suffer. It wasn't malice, it was mercy. I went to my computer and opened up a new window, GoDaddy.com. I typed in a new domain name, South Star Tech.com available. I clicked buy. The king is dead, long live the queen. By the next morning, North Star Systems wasn't a company. It was a crime scene. The transaction freeze had now lasted 18 hours. The damage was catastrophic. Major clients, banks, hospital networks, retail chains had already initiated emergency protocol breaches. They were moving their volume to competitors. Stripe and Square were probably having a record day, feasting on the carcass of North Star's market share. My phone was buzzing nonstop, but not from management. It was the staff. DevOps Steve, hey Michelle. Gary just resigned. He literally walked out, threw his scarf in the trash can and left. Claire is locked in her office. Project MGR Sarah, they're saying we might not get paid on Friday. Is that true? Sales Brad, I just got off the phone with Amazon. They pulled the partnership. It's over, isn't it? I replied to them one by one. Steve, send me your resume. I'm starting something new. Sarah, don't worry about payroll. If they default, you have priority claim. Also, send me your resume. Brad, yeah, it's over. But you're a good salesman. You sold ice to Eskimos. Send me your resume. I was poaching them. Shamelessly. Openly. Why wouldn't I? They were good people working for a bad captain. I was just sending out the lifeboats. At 10 o'clock a.m., the news broke on TechCrunch. Headline, North Star Systems goes dark. CEO disruption leads to infrastructure collapse. The article quoted an anonymous source, definitely Gary, saying that the CEO had fired the owner of the servers without realizing she didn't own the servers. The internet ate it up. It was the perfect storm of corporate schadenfreude. Memes of Claire, taken from her influencer CEO Instagram page, were being captioned with 404 CEO not found and gaslight, gatekeep, glitch. I watched from my home office as I set up the framework for South Star Tech. It wasn't hard. I already had the hardware Ironclad Holdings. I had the capital, my savings, plus the settlements that were inevitably coming. And now I had the talent pipeline. I received an email from the biggest client Northstar had, a national logistics firm called Trans Global. Their CTO, a guy named Marcus who I had known for years, sent a direct message. Subject, are you operational? Body, Michelle, we know what happened. We know who holds the keys. If you spin up a new instance under a new entity, we will move our entire volume to you. We trust the architect, not the logo. Let us know. That was the nail in the coffin. Northstar wasn't losing clients to competitors. They were losing them to me, and I hadn't even printed business cards yet. I called Marcus back. Give me 48 hours to scrub the servers and re-image them with a new encryption key. I'll have you processing by Monday. Done, Marcus said. We're serving Northstar with a breach of contract notice today. I hung up and looked at the whiteboard in my office. I drew a line down the middle. On the left, legacy baggage. On the right, future revenue. I started moving names from the left to the right. The office in downtown was probably in chaos. I imagined the empty cubicles, the ringing phones echoing in the void, the smell of fear and stale coffee. Claire was likely trying to spin this as a strategic pause, but nobody buys a pause when money is involved. Money likes speed. Money likes certainty. I was certainty. Claire was chaos. The irony was, if she had just treated me with a shred of respect, if she had just given me a gold watch and a consulting retainer, I would have handed over the keys. I would have trained her team. I would have retired to my porch and drank iced tea. But she had to be the alpha. She had to mark her territory. Well, she marked it all right. She marked it with gasoline and handed me the match. My driveway alarm chimed. Someone was at the gate. I checked the security camera feed. It was a black Mercedes. Harold's car. He looked terrible. He was wearing a rumpled polo shirt and he looked like he hadn't slept in a week, even though it had only been 24 hours. I buzzed the gate open. It was time for the final act. Harold walked up the flagstone path to my front door like a man walking to the gallows. I met him on the porch. I didn't invite him inside. My house was my sanctuary. He didn't belong there anymore. Michelle, he croaked. His eyes were red-rimmed. I flew back. Private charter. Cost me a fortune. Hello, Harold, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You look tired. Tired? He let out a harsh, barking laugh. I'm ruined. The stock dropped 60% this morning. The board is calling for my head. Claire. Claire is locked in her office crying. She does that when she doesn't get her way, I noted dryly. She's a child, Michelle, you know that. She's incompetent, I know that now. He took a step closer, his hands pleading. But you, your family, we built this, you and me, in the garage. Remember the pizza? Remember the code sprints? I remember. I said, I also remember you cashing out $20 million last year while I got an Employee of the Month plaque. I'll make it right, he insisted. Come back, name your title. CEO. You want to be CEO? It's yours. I'll fire Claire. I'll fire the whole board. Just come back and turn the servers on. I looked at this man. This man I had once admired. This man I had viewed as a mentor. I realized I didn't hate him. I just pitied him. He thought everything could be fixed with a deal. He didn't understand that trust isn't a renewable resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. Harold, I said softly, I can't come back. Why not pride? Don't let pride kill a billion-dollar company, Michelle. It's not pride, I shook my head. It's physics. The structure is gone. The clients have left. Trans Global signed with a new provider 10 minutes ago. His face went pale. Who did they sign with? Me, I said. South Star Tech. Harold stared at me. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. You started a competitor? I didn't start a competitor, Harold. I just kept doing my job. I provide infrastructure to clients who need stability. Northstar couldn't provide stability, so the market corrected itself. You stole my clients, he accused, a flash of the old anger returning. I didn't steal anything, they called me. They called me because they know I own the engine. They know that when I say uptime, I mean it. They know that when you say innovation, you mean nepotism. He slumped against the porch railing. The fight drained out of him. He looked out at the oak trees in my yard. I should have never given it to her, he whispered. I knew she wasn't ready, but she's my daughter. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to protect the company, I said. You were supposed to protect the people who worked for you. You were supposed to protect me. He looked at me, tears gathering in his eyes. I'm sorry, Michelle. I know you are Harold. I believe you. I stood up straight. But apologies don't reboot servers. What happens now? He asked, sounding like a lost child. Now, I shrugged. Northstar files for Chapter 11. You liquidate the assets, the brand, the IP, the furniture. My lawyers will be in touch about the unpaid lease invoices. We'll be first in line as creditors. And you? I'm going to work, I said. I have a new company to run, and I have a lot of resumes to review. Your old staff needs jobs. Harold nodded slowly. He understood it was over. The legacy he thought he was leaving to his daughter was gone. He had traded a kingdom for a family photo op, and now he had neither. He turned and walked back to his car. It looked smaller than I remembered. I watched him drive away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel giddy. I felt clean. It was like scrubbing a dirty floor. The grime was gone. The surface was raw, but it was ready for something new. I went back inside and poured myself one last bourbon, to old times and to being obsolete, 3 months later. The carcass of North Star Systems is still being picked over by the vultures in bankruptcy court. Claire was removed by the board 2 days after the collapse. Rumor has it she's back in Bali, healing her trauma and launching a podcast about toxic workplaces. The irony is thick enough to choke a horse. Harold had a minor stroke. He's recovering, but he's out of the game. He spends his days on the porch in Florida, probably wondering where it all went wrong. I sent him a card. I didn't sign it. South Star Tech is booming. We're operating out of a converted warehouse in East Austin. No marble tables, no kombucha taps, just rows of desks, humming servers, and the smell of coffee that actually works. I hired back 80% of the North Star engineering team. Steve is my VP of engineering. Sarah runs operations. They're making 20% more than they did under Claire, and they have equity. Real equity. Not phantom stock options that vest in a decade. We bought the North Star client list for pennies on the dollar during the liquidation auction. It was satisfying to sign that check. I basically bought my own life's work back for the price of a used Camry. I'm not the chief infrastructure architect anymore. I'm the owner, the CEO, the janitor if I need to be. I still drive my truck. I still drink bourbon. And I still keep that original contract framed on my wall. It's a reminder. People like Claire think power comes from a title. They think it comes from sitting at the head of the table. They don't understand that power is plumbing. It's the stuff you don't see. It's the wires in the wall. It's the sewer lines. It's the servers in the cold, dark room. As long as the shit flows and the lights turn on, nobody cares about you. But the second you turn the valve, the second you pull the plug, you realize who really runs the world. It's not the people in the suits. It's the people with the keys. I was sitting in my new office, listening to the hum of the my racks, when my phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Claire Wells has viewed your profile. I smiled. I didn't view hers back. I blocked her. Then I put on my headphones, turned up some Danny DeVito Asmer, Don't Judge, It Centers Me, and went back to work. They called me obsolete. I call myself the upgrade. TLDR, CEO fired me thinking I was useless. Didn't realize I personally owned the servers running the company. I turned them off. Company collapsed. I started a new one with their clients and staff. Don't mess with the plumber. Real power doesn't need to shout. It operates with quiet, undeniable precision. Michelle showed them exactly what obsolete truly looked like, making it clear that true value isn't always announced from a podium. Its absence, however, leaves an undeniable void. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.